Welcome back to the Makerbreak Society. In this one, I'll be teaching you how to install RetroPie on the Raspberry Pi 5 and how to get PS2 games working via AetherSX2. At the time of recording this, there's no official RetroPie image for the Pi 5, so we'll be doing a manual install. Now, let's get into it. Okay, so to install RetroPie, you're going to need one or two things. An SD card adapter or a USB micro SD card reader, and a keyboard if you're planning entering commands directly onto the Pi. I'll be using SSH, which means I won't need the keyboard. So let's move on to our first step. Okay, so the first step is to fire up the Raspberry Pi imager. If you don't have the Raspberry Pi imager, you can get it by going to raspberrypi.com/software. And scroll down about halfway down, about a third of the way down the page, and download. You can download for Windows, Mac, or Ubuntu, or if you're using Raspberry Pi to install this on a Raspberry Pi, you can download it there too. This would be an interesting method to do it, but it is doable. Once you've got it downloaded and installed, you'll be greeted with this screen. So we're going to choose device, Raspberry Pi 5, and we're going to choose our operating system. So we're going to choose Raspberry Pi OS Other. And we want Raspberry Pi OS Lite 64-bit. We're going to choose storage. So I'm going to plug in my micro SD card. And then choose storage. I'm going to pick that micro SD card and click Next. Would you like to apply OS customizations? I'm going to go Edit Settings. So to keep this as much like an official RetroPie build as possible, I'm setting the hostname to RetroPie, setting the username and password to Pi and Raspberry. And in here you can also set up your Wi-Fi SSID and password. I'm going to set my locale settings. So America Regina, and then keyboard layout of US. If you don't set these, Wi-Fi won't automatically connect. And go to Services, enable SSH, use password authentication. That just means that it's going to require that Pi username and the password of Raspberry. And options, eject media when finished. And click Save. And then we're going to answer this as yes. And let it flash. All existing data will be erased. Are you sure you want to continue? Yes. Depending on the speed of your card, this will be pretty quick. But if you've got a slower card, this can take 5, even 10 minutes. This card is a really fast card, which is why it's writing so fast. Now we're on to verifying. If you don't want to let it verify, you click Cancel Verify, the flashing will still succeed. It just means that it's not going to verify the integrity of the drive. I'm going to let it finish because it's fairly quick. Raspberry Pi OS Lite 64-bit has been written. You can now remove the SD card from the reader. So it's already ejected it, so now you can remove it. So we're going to remove it, put it into the Pi, power it up, and I'll show you the boot up sequence for it. Okay, for step 2, we're going to put the SD card into our Pi, plug in a display if you need one. You actually don't need one for this step, but it makes getting the IP address a little easier, and power it on. So it's going to do a quick boot, and it's going to make your SSH keys, and then it's going to restart. And it's generating our keys. Once it fully reboots, we're going to let it boot all the way up, and then after it's done that, we're going to need to grab the IP address. if you're not doing it with a screen attached, you'll have to either go into your router settings or use something like Advanced IP Scanner to find your IP. Okay, now that we're done booting, we'll look up a few lines here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines up for, from that first OK. You'll see your IP address here. So in my case, it's 11.11.11.215. So make sure you make note of that. We're going to need that in our next step. And speaking of our next step, let's pop back over to the computer. All right, so on to step 3. So we're going to open up PuTTY. We're going to type in the IP address that we grabbed from step 2, or that you grabbed using either your router or Advanced IP Scanner or some other network scanner so you can find your IP address. We're going to enter the one that we found. So it's 11.11.11.215. Port 22 is fine. We're going to click open. You're going to get a pop-up like this. You may get a pop-up like this. This is because I've done a lot of work on Raspberry Pis. This IP address has been used before, so it doesn't recognize the key. If you get this, just click accept. And we're going to go log in as Pi. Password is the one we set in the imager, which is Raspberry. You'll notice that it didn't type anything there. It still types, it just doesn't show you that anything's being typed. Get this a little bit bigger for us. Alright, so now there's a couple of commands we need to run on here. I will link them in the description, but we're getting them from here. So retropie.org.uk/docs/manual-installation. So the first command we're going to run here is sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade. I'm going to click copy there. Right click and it just pastes in. I'm going to click yes. And this is going to take a while. Apparently it's not going to take a while. I must have grabbed a newer version from the imager. That's good. Now let's head back over here. So we've already set our locale stuff. So we did that in the imager. So we can skip past that. So we're going to install RetroPie. I'll copy this first command. Paste. And yes. So what that did was copy the install files. So what that did was copy the lsb-release. The next one, we're going to download the setup script. So let's copy the setup script over. And we're going to execute the script. If I'm not mistaken, this does take a while. Actually, less time than I remembered. Yeah, so basically this is just a warning saying that, you know, it's not really designed to be installed this way, and, you know, everything's on you, essentially. Click OK. Warning, 64-bit support on Raspberry Pi is not yet officially supported, although the main emulator package selection should work. The new image isn't ready. Once it is ready, I'll make another video on the easy way to do this. Yeah, so let's go back to our instructions. So we want to manage packages, and then basic install, quick install. So basic install. This will install. We click yes. And apparently there's no quick install question. Now I know this does take a while, so I'll speed this up and see you when it's done. Okay, so that took a little over an hour, which is why I didn't end up fast forwarding through it. I just cut it. Let's make this a little bit bigger. That's pretty much it. If you just want the most basic installation and you're good to go from there, that's it. If you want, you can go into like manage packages, for example, or these are all the packages that are already on main. You can see that these packages are also already on. And then all your optional and whatnot packages. So if there's any other packages you want, like, you know, the Beetle PSX or PSP's in here as well, PPSSPP, you want any of them, you can install them now. Otherwise, don't reboot. First click configuration tools, then auto start. And start emulation station at boot. Emulation is set to launch at boot. Cool. And we can back out. Go back. And now we can perform reboot and it'll start an emulation station. And now we'll pop over to my capture and I'll show you how she boots up. And finally, step 4. This will look familiar to anybody who's used RetroPie before. This is identical to how a RetroPie image will boot up after fresh install. So from here, we plug in my PlayStation 4 controller, and we set all the controls up. There we are, all set up with RetroPie. Now that we've got RetroPie installed, let's move on to getting AetherSX2 installed. Before we get into that part, I have a few shoutouts to people who made this process a whole lot easier. First shout is to Fozid on Reddit, r/RetroPie, for the main documentation. The next shoutout goes to, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce this, on GitHub for the fork of RetroPie extras that we're using. And the last shoutout goes to lifeinthefastline on Reddit r/RetroPie for the kernel changes needed. Links to all 3 posts will be down in the description. Just a quick reminder before we get into it, I'll be giving away one of these 2 PS Pi version 6s once I hit 1,000 subscribers. So if you like this video and you don't want to miss the giveaway announcement, make sure to get subscribed. First thing you're going to need is a Raspberry Pi 4 or 5 running RetroPie 64-bit. There's no official image for this, so you're going to have to manually install it. I have a video here on how to do it on the Raspberry Pi 5, but the process is the same for the Raspberry Pi 4, except you select Raspberry Pi 4 in the imager right here. Once you have that done, boot up your Raspberry Pi. So step 1 is to SSH into your Raspberry Pi. I'm going to assume that you already know how to do that because you've already got RetroPie installed manually. If you don't, you can review my video on installing RetroPie manually as I walk through it there. Step 2 is to make sure you're up to date with all of your packages by entering the following command. Once that's done, we're going to edit your boot config to use kernel 8. Type the following command. Scroll down to the bottom of the file, and you're going to add these two lines after bracket all bracket. Once you've added those two lines, hit Control X, and then Y when you're asked if you want to save, and then hit Enter with the save location. Now we're going to install Vulkan with the following command. When you're prompted during the install, hit Y to accept. The next step, we're going to install RetroPie extras by entering the following commands one at a time. Now, when this window pops up, you're going to make sure that choose which modules to install is selected and hit enter. Now highlight AetherSX2.sh and press the spacebar to select it. Feel free to select any other modules you wish to install by highlighting them and press spacebar. Once you've got all the modules you want to install selected, hit enter and then enter again, then the right arrow key and enter again to exit. Now we're ready to run the AetherSX2 Install script. Enter the following command, and when the warning pops up, hit enter. Now at this screen, we're going to go to Manage Packages, EXP, then scroll all the way to the bottom and highlight AetherSX2 and hit enter. Then hit enter again on Install from Source and select Yes. After it's done installing, select Back 3 times to get back to the main menu, and then select Configuration/Tools. Scroll down to Samba and click OK. Then click on Install RetroPie Samba Shares. Once it's done, select back a few more times and perform reboot. If your Pi doesn't reboot after, enter this command. Technically, that's it for installing AetherSX2. But if you actually want to use it, you're going to need the BIOS and some PS2 games. The file that you need for the BIOS is this. You'll have to dump this on your own from a PlayStation 2 like I did, or a quick Google search can probably help you. Once you have it, connect to your Pi via FTP, or by typing / your Raspberry Pi's IP address like this. Once in, your BIOS goes in this location. And your ROMs go here. Once you have both the BIOS and the ROMs transferred, switch over to RetroPie, open the main menu by pressing Start, then go to Quit, then Restart Emulation Station. Once that's done, PS2 should show up in your games list. You'll now see PS2 listed as an option, and your games will show up there. When you launch a game for the first time, it'll ask you what you want to use as the default emulator. Select AetherSX2 and your game's going to boot. The performance of PS2 games is decent on the Pi5, and from what I've been reading, it's also decent on the Pi4 with some tweaks. As you can see, playing Crash here, that the average FPS that I'm getting is between 45 and 55, and that's with full resolution. Things could be adjusted if needed, but this game feels great and it feels like it's running full speed. And that's it for this one. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the giveaway announcement video. And until next time, remember, it doesn't matter if you make or break, so long as you're having fun.